Me and Daniel have been married for 7 years, together for 9 total. We have 2 kids, Wyatt, who just turned 6, and Ella, who's 4. We met through mutual friends at this outdoor concert thing back when we were both in our early 20s. And honestly, for most of our relationship, I thought we were solid. The kind of couple other people would say they wanted to be like. Mara came into my life about 5 years ago. She moved to our area for work, and we connected through this gym class that neither of us even ended up sticking with. But we became close fast. She was at my house constantly, knew everything about my life, was there when Ella was born, came to every birthday party and holiday gathering. She didn't have family nearby, so we basically adopted her into ours. Daniel always got along with her too, which I thought was great, because it meant we could all hang out together without any weird tension. The thing is, I didn't find out through some dramatic phone discovery like you see in movies. It was way more pathetic than that. About 3 weeks ago, I was looking for the extra car charger that I know we have somewhere because Daniel bought it specifically for road trips. I was checking all the usual spots, glove compartment, center console, and then I remembered he keeps some stuff in the storage compartment under the passenger seat that I literally never open because it's usually just full of random receipts and napkins. So I popped it open and there's this phone. Not his regular phone, a completely different phone in a black case. And I just stared at it for a solid 30 seconds, trying to make sense of why my husband would have a whole separate phone hidden in his car. My first thought was actually that maybe it was an old phone he forgot about. But when I pressed the button to check, it turned on. Battery at 73%. Recent notifications on the lock screen. And one of those notifications was a text preview from a contact saved as just the letter M. The message said something like, "Can't stop thinking about last Tuesday," and there was a heart emoji after it. I sat in that car in our driveway for probably 15 minutes just holding this phone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it twice. Part of me wanted to put it back and pretend I never saw it because I think some part of me already knew. But I couldn't. I had to know. The passcode was our anniversary date, which is so messed up when you think about it. The text went back 2 years, and they were all to Mara. Not just casual texting either, full-on relationship stuff. Plans to meet up when I thought he was working late or at the gym. Inside jokes. Things they wanted to do together in the future. And yeah, explicit stuff too that I am not going to get into because I still feel physically ill thinking about it. But here's the part that really destroyed me. There were multiple conversations where they talked about Emmy, about how they felt bad sometimes, but also how they thought I was too focused on the kids to notice anything. How Daniel felt like I didn't appreciate him anymore. How Mara said she tried to feel guilty but couldn't because she genuinely thought they were meant to be together. There were messages from maybe 8 months ago where they were discussing timelines. Like literal timelines for when Daniel could leave me. They talked about waiting until Ella was in school full-time so it would be easier on the kids. They talked about how they'd have to be careful about how they came out as a couple so people wouldn't judge them too hard. They had been planning this for years. While Mara sat at my kitchen table and listened to me talk about my marriage, while she helped me pick out anniversary gifts for Daniel, while she told me I was so lucky to have a guy like him, I screenshot everything, and I mean everything. I was in that car for almost 2 hours going through every single message thread, every photo they'd sent each other, everything. I emailed them all to myself and to a backup email, and also saved them to a cloud folder. Then I put the phone back exactly where I found it, because I needed time to think about what I was going to do. The next few days were the hardest of my entire life. Acting normal around Daniel while knowing what I knew. Seeing Mara's name pop up in our group chat making plans for her birthday party that weekend, and having to respond like everything was fine. I didn't tell anyone yet because I wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row first. I called around and talked to a lawyer about what my options were. I started quietly gathering financial documents and making copies of important paperwork. But I also couldn't stop reading those messages over and over. Every time I thought I'd processed it, I'd find another conversation that made it worse. Like the one where Daniel told her he loved her, and she said it back. Or the one where they joked about how oblivious I was. Or the one from literally 2 days before I found the phone where Mara asked when they could see each other next, and Daniel said he'd figure out an excuse. Mara's birthday party was that Saturday. She'd rented out a section at this wine bar downtown and invited probably 30 people, including our whole friend group and some of her work people. I originally was going to skip it and confront them privately, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. These two had been lying to everyone, not just me. Our entire friend group thought Mara was this sweet single girl who just hadn't found the right guy yet. They thought Daniel was this devoted husband and father. And I was just supposed to let them keep that image while they destroyed my life behind closed doors. I decided if they wanted to act fake in front of everyone, then I could too. Until I couldn't anymore. The party started at 7. I showed up at 7:30 because I wanted to make sure people were already there. Daniel had gotten there earlier because he offered to help Mara set up, which at the time I thought was just him being nice, but now I know was just them wanting time alone before everyone showed up. When I walked in, Daniel was standing near the bar talking to Mara and a few other people. He saw me and gave me this big smile and wave like everything was normal. Mara came over to hug me and tell me she was so glad I made it. And I hugged her back and smiled and said happy birthday, and played along for about an hour because I wanted to wait until more people arrived. Our friends Stephanie and Maya showed up around 8 with their husbands. Mara's work friends were there, some neighbors, a few other people from various parts of her life. The wine was flowing and everyone was having a good time, and there I was, standing in the middle of it, feeling like I was going to explode. I pulled Stephanie aside at one point and asked if she'd noticed anything weird between Daniel and Mara lately. She looked confused and said no. Why? I told her I'd explain later, but to just watch them together for a bit. She gave me this concerned look, but agreed. Around 9:30, I couldn't take it anymore. Mara was opening gifts and everyone was gathered around, and Daniel was standing right next to her, helping hand her presents like they were already a couple hosting a party together. And something in me just snapped. I didn't yell. I actually think my voice was pretty calm when I said it. I just waited for a pause and then said that before she opened any more gifts, I thought everyone should know that Mara had been sleeping with my husband for 2 years. Daniel immediately started saying I didn't know what I was talking about. Mara looked like she was going to pass out, but I was ready. I pulled out my phone and started reading some of the messages out loud. The ones where they talked about me being too oblivious to notice. The ones where they discussed waiting until my kids were older to be together publicly. The ones where Daniel told her he loved her. Mara started crying and saying I was taking things out of context. Daniel kept talking over me, trying to explain that those messages weren't what they looked like. And I just laughed because what else could they look like? There was no context where "can't wait to be with you for real" and "I love you so much and here's a picture of exactly what I want to do to you later" could mean something innocent. Some of Mara's work friends left immediately because they obviously didn't want to be in the middle of whatever this was. But our actual friend group stayed, and that's when things got really ugly. Daniel pulled me aside and started hissing at me about how I was embarrassing him and that we needed to talk about this at home. I told him absolutely not, that I was done having private conversations, while he lied to my face. He kept saying I was being hysterical and that people were going to think I'd lost my mind. And that's when Mara walked over and actually had the nerve to tell me that she understood I was upset, but that I was making a scene, and maybe we could all sit down and talk about this like adults. I almost lost it right there. She was talking to me like I was the one who'd done something wrong, like I was being unreasonable for being upset that my husband had been cheating on me with her for 2 years. I told her to stay the hell away from me and that I had nothing to say to her. She started crying harder and saying this wasn't how she wanted me to find out and that she never meant to hurt me. And Daniel was comforting her, right in front of me, his hand on her back telling her it was okay, while I stood there watching my marriage and my friendship disintegrate in real time. Stephanie came over and basically positioned herself between me and them, which I think was her way of protecting me from doing something stupid. Maya was just standing there with her mouth open, looking back and forth like she couldn't process what was happening. A few other people from our friend group started asking questions and demanding to see the messages themselves because they couldn't believe Daniel and Mara would do something like this. I showed them. I showed everyone who wanted to see. And watching their faces as they read through those texts and realized this wasn't me being crazy, this was real, was both validating and devastating at the same time. The party obviously ended after that. People started leaving in awkward clusters, some stopping to hug me and say they were sorry and they had no idea. A few people actually hugged Mara too, which made me want to scream, but whatever. Daniel tried to get me to leave with him, and I flat out refused. I told him to go stay somewhere else because I didn't want him in our house that night. He got angry and said I couldn't just kick him out of his own home, and I said watch me. Stephanie offered to let me stay at her place with the kids, but my mom had already been watching them, and I just wanted to be in my own house. So Daniel ended up leaving with one of his friends, and I drove home alone. That was 3 weeks ago, and honestly, things have only gotten more complicated since then. Daniel has been texting and calling constantly. At first, he was angry and defensive, saying I had no right to humiliate him like that, and that I'd ruined Mara's birthday and made everyone think he was some monster when it wasn't that simple. Then after a few days, he switched to apologetic, saying he was sorry and he wanted to work things out and he'd do whatever it took to fix this. He keeps saying it was a mistake and that he still loves me and our family and doesn't want to throw away 7 years of marriage. When I asked him if he was willing to cut Mara out of his life completely, he couldn't give me a straight answer. He said it was complicated and that he cared about her, but that didn't mean he didn't care about me too. He said they'd developed feelings over time, and he couldn't just turn those off overnight, but that he was choosing our family, and that should be enough. It's not enough. How am I supposed to believe he's committed to working on our marriage if he can't even commit to not talking to the woman he cheated on me with? And Mara. God, Mara. She's been trying to reach out too, sending these long messages about how she never meant for any of this to happen, and how she valued our friendship and how sorry she is. She keeps saying that she and Daniel both just got caught up in something they didn't plan, and that she hopes someday I can forgive her. She actually had the audacity to say that she thinks we could all move past this eventually if I was willing to try. I haven't responded to any of her messages. I blocked her on everything except my regular text because my lawyer said to keep records of everything she sends in case it becomes relevant later. Our friend group is a complete mess now. Some people are fully on my side and have cut Daniel and Mara off completely. Stephanie and Maya have been amazing and check on me constantly. But there are others who seem to think that while what Daniel and Mara did was wrong, I also handled the situation badly, by airing everything out at the party. A few people have said things like, well, you didn't have to do it so publicly, or you could have talked to them privately first. One person, this guy Steve, who's been friends with Daniel since college, actually told me that maybe if I'd been paying more attention to my marriage, this wouldn't have happened. I almost threw my drink in his face. I really did. Because imagine having the audacity to blame the person who got cheated on for not preventing the cheating. Like it was my job to be so perfect and attentive that my husband wouldn't want to sleep with my best friend for 2 literal years while lying to my face every single day. Daniel is still talking to her. I know because mutual friends have mentioned seeing them together and because he's not even trying to hide it anymore. When I confronted him about it, he said that since I was already planning to divorce him anyway, he didn't see the point in pretending. But then in the same conversation, he'll say he still wants to work things out and asks if we can go to counseling. I don't understand how those two things can exist at the same time in his brain. You can't say you want to save your marriage while actively continuing the relationship that destroyed it. My mom thinks I should file for divorce immediately and stop engaging with him at all. My dad says I need to think about the kids and at least try counseling before making any permanent decisions. My sister told me to burn all his stuff in the front yard. The lawyer I talked to said I'm in a decent position, given I have documented proof of the affair and our state considers that in divorce proceedings. But Daniel is pushing hard for us to try to work things out before I make any legal moves. He showed up at the house yesterday saying he wanted to talk, and when I let him in because the kids were with my mom, he spent 2 hours trying to convince me that what he and Mara have isn't real love. It's just something that happened, and that our marriage is worth fighting for. I asked him why I should believe anything he says when he lied to me for 2 years. He said he knows he messed up but that people make mistakes, and I need to decide if I'm going to let one mistake define our whole relationship. I pointed out that it wasn't one mistake, it was 2 years of continuous deliberate choices to lie and cheat and plan a future with someone else while pretending to be happy with me. He left around 10, but before he did, he said something that's been stuck in my head since. He said that Mara told him I was going to react this way, and that I would never be able to get past it. Like they'd discussed how I would respond to being betrayed. Like my reaction was something they'd factored into their plans. I need to know if I'm handling this wrong. Should I have confronted them privately instead of at the party? Should I be giving Daniel a chance to prove he wants to change? Is it crazy that part of me is angrier at Mara than at him because she was supposed to be my friend and she looked me in the eyes for 2 years while doing this? There's more that I haven't even gotten into yet. Some stuff that came out after the party that made everything even more complicated. But this is already so long and I just needed to get the basics out first. If anyone has been through something similar, please tell me how you handled it. I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know which way is up anymore. Update. So I said I'd update, and here I am because this week has been insane and I need to get it all out before I actually lose my mind. After my first post, Daniel kept texting about wanting to talk. At first I ignored him, but then I realized I had questions that were eating me alive. Not because I wanted to forgive him, but because I needed to understand how I lived in a lie for 2 years without seeing it. My brain wouldn't stop spinning, and I figured the only way to make it stop was to get the full truth even if it destroyed me. I told him he could come over Sunday night. Kids were at my mom's because I knew this was going to get ugly and I didn't want them anywhere near it. He showed up at 8 and the first thing he did was try to hug me, like we were friends, like everything was fine. I stepped back so fast I almost tripped and told him to sit down and keep his hands to himself. He looked hurt and I swear I almost laughed in his face. He was hurt. By me not wanting a hug. He sat on the couch and started his whole speech about how sorry he was and how these past few weeks had been the hardest of his life and how he couldn't sleep and couldn't focus and blah blah blah. I let him talk for maybe 2 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. I told him to shut up. I said I didn't want his apologies because they meant nothing. I wanted answers. Real answers. And if he was going to sit here and feed me more BS, he could get out right now. He looked shocked. I don't think I'd ever told him to shut up in 9 years together. I asked him when exactly it started with Mara, not the vague crap from his messages, the specific moment when my best friend became something else. He started stammering about how he didn't remember the exact date and I cut him off. I said, try harder. I said I spent 2 years not knowing what was happening in my own marriage, so the least he could do was give me actual details. He finally said it started after Ella's first birthday party. Mara stayed late to help clean up and they talked for hours after I went to bed. He said something shifted that night. I stood up so fast the coffee table rattled. Ella's first birthday. My daughter's first birthday. While I was upstairs exhausted from hosting a party and taking care of a 1-year-old, he was downstairs falling for my best friend, on my child's birthday. He tried to say something and I told him I wasn't done. I asked when it became physical. He said that wasn't important. The details would only hurt me more. I screamed at him that I was already destroyed, so he might as well finish the job. Tell me everything. He said about 4 months later, when Ella was around 16 months. Their first time was at her apartment when I thought he was at a work conference in Denver. I started pacing because I couldn't stand still. I remembered that conference. I remembered him calling me from the hotel saying he missed me and the kids. I remembered him bringing back a stuffed animal for Wyatt and a little dress for Ella. There was no conference. He spent 3 days with her and then brought my children gifts. I asked him if he bought those gifts himself or if Mara helped pick them out. He didn't answer, which meant she did. She helped him buy presents for my kids after spending 3 days with their father. I grabbed a pillow from the couch and threw it at him. I told him he was disgusting. He tried to say he knew and I said no. He didn't get to agree with me. He didn't get to act like we were on the same page now. We would never be on the same page. I asked how many times. He said he didn't keep count. I said, guess. He said maybe once or twice a month at first, then more often, weekly for the past 8 months or so. I did the math out loud. 50 times minimum. 50 times he slept with my best friend. 50 times he lied about where he was. 50 showers to wash her off before getting in bed with me. 50 times he looked me in the eyes afterward and acted like nothing happened. He started saying he knew it was a lot, and I told him to stop minimizing. A lot. Like we were talking about how many drinks he had at happy hour. This was my entire life he was lying about. I asked where. He said mostly her apartment. Sometimes hotels when they wanted to do something special. Special. They had special occasions. Like an anniversary or something. I asked if that's what he meant, and he got quiet. I asked him again if they celebrated anniversaries of their affair, and he finally said they'd gone away together for a weekend to mark 1 year. I had to hold on to the back of a chair because my legs felt weak. I asked him when. He said last October. I remembered last October. He told me he was going fishing with his buddy Steve for a long weekend. I was actually happy for him because I thought he needed guy time. Steve. I asked if Steve knew. If Steve covered for him. He said Steve knew they were having problems in their marriage, but didn't know specifically about Mara. Problems in their marriage. So he'd been telling his friends we had problems while I thought everything was fine. He was building a whole narrative where I was the bad guy so people wouldn't judge him when he eventually left. I walked straight to the bedroom. He followed me asking what I was doing. I ripped the sheets off the bed and threw them at him. I said I wanted these out of my house. I didn't care if it was the same sheets or not. I didn't care if I was being crazy. I wanted anything that might have touched them together out. I told him he didn't get to tell me to calm down. Calm was not an option. He backed up with his hands raised like I was some wild animal. Maybe I was. I didn't care. I asked him the question that had been destroying me. Did he love her? He started with his complicated bullshit, and I said no. Not complicated, yes or no. Do you love her? He said yes. I felt like I'd been punched, even though I knew, even though I read it in those messages. Hearing him say it out loud was different. Then he said, but he also loved me, like that was supposed to help. Like being loved alongside his mistress was some kind of prize. I asked which one of us he loved more, and he said that wasn't fair. I said, life isn't fair. Answer the question. He said he couldn't compare because they were different kinds of love. What he had with me was history and family and comfort. What he had with Mara was passion and excitement and feeling seen. I grabbed the closest thing, which was a water glass from the nightstand, and threw it against the wall. It shattered and Daniel jumped back. I didn't even care about the mess. Feeling seen. He felt seen by her. Like I was furniture. Like I was just there in the background while Mara was the one who truly understood him. I asked if I made him feel invisible. And he started going on about how after we had kids, I became so focused on being a mother that I stopped being his wife. That he tried to talk to me about feeling disconnected, but I was always tired or busy. I got right in his face. Close enough that he backed up against the wall. I told him I was tired because I was raising his children. I was busy because I was holding our family together while working and managing a house and being everything to everyone. And instead of helping me or talking to me like an adult, he went and found someone with no responsibilities who had all the time in the world to make him feel special. He said he knew that now and he made the wrong choice. And I said no. He didn't make a wrong choice. He made 2 years of wrong choices. Every single day he woke up and chose to keep lying. That was a lifestyle. I asked him why he didn't just leave me. If he was so unhappy, if Mara was so amazing, why stay? And here's what this coward said. He said he didn't want to lose the kids. That if he left me for another woman, I'd make the divorce ugly and he'd end up being a weekend dad. He said he was scared. So I was his safety net. His comfortable backup plan. He got to have his exciting, passionate love with Mara while I kept his life running and his kids taken care of. And he stayed not because he loved me, but because leaving was too complicated. I told him to get out. He tried to keep talking, and I opened the bedroom door and pointed. Get out. Now. He left but said he still wanted to work things out and he'd give me space. The next few days, I focused on practical stuff. Met with my lawyer and told her I wanted to actually file, not just explore options. She started preparing paperwork. Then on Thursday, I had lunch with Stephanie and Maya. They told me something that made me want to flip the table at the restaurant. Maya had run into Daniel and Mara at the grocery store. Not hiding, not sneaking, just shopping together like a couple. Mara rushed off when she saw Maya, but Daniel actually came over to say hi, like nothing was weird, like he wasn't pushing a cart with his mistress. I called Daniel the second I got home, didn't even take my jacket off. I asked him if he'd been seeing Mara, and he tried to say it wasn't what I thought. I told him to cut the BS. Had he or had he not been spending time with her? Yes or no? He admitted yes. They'd seen each other a few times to talk about everything that was happening. I asked what the hell they needed to talk about. The affair was exposed. It was over. What conversations could they possibly need to have? He said he couldn't just cut off someone he'd been close to for 2 years, that they needed to figure out how to handle things. I told him that was the most pathetic excuse I'd ever heard. He couldn't tell me he wanted to save our marriage while going grocery shopping with his girlfriend. That's not how this works. He said I was being unreasonable, that I expected him to flip a switch on 2 years of feeling. Unreasonable. I was being unreasonable for expecting my husband to stop hanging out with the woman he cheated on me with. He said I was backing him into a corner, and I said, he backed himself into that corner when he decided to screw my best friend. I was just refusing to let him escape. We argued for another 20 minutes. Him saying I wasn't being fair. Me saying fair died when he started his affair. Finally, he said he'd talk to Mara tomorrow and end it. I said I'd believe it when I saw it. That was Thursday. Friday, nothing from him. Saturday morning, Stephanie texted me a screenshot. Mara had posted a picture on Instagram of her and Daniel at some bar, sitting close. She deleted it after 20 minutes, but Stephanie caught it. This was after he said he'd end things. Then Daniel texted me a long message about how he'd been thinking and I was right and he was choosing his family. He sent that after spending the day with her, after the Instagram post. He thought I didn't know. Monday morning, I called my lawyer and told her to finalize everything. Papers would be ready by end of week. Daniel keeps texting asking why I'm not answering, saying he meant what he said, asking to talk. I finally texted back this morning, told him he could come over tomorrow at noon, but I'm not meeting him to talk about working things out. The divorce papers will be sitting on the kitchen counter when he walks in. He wanted time to figure things out. Well, I figured things out too. I figured out I deserve better than being someone's safe option while he loves someone else. Tomorrow I end this. Last update. Okay, so the conversation happened. Daniel came over around noon. Kids were at my mom's. I had the divorce papers sitting on the kitchen counter because I wanted him to see them the second he walked in. And he did. He asked if I was serious, and I said completely serious. I told him I was done with the conversations that went nowhere, done waiting for him to magically become a different person, done being the only one actually trying to save something he destroyed. And instead of apologizing or begging like he'd been doing for weeks, he got mad. He said I was throwing away our family over my pride, that I cared more about being right than about keeping our kids in an intact home. He said Wyatt and Ella were going to grow up in a broken family because I couldn't get over myself. I told him our family was already broken the second he started sleeping with Mara, and he said no. It was broken the second I decided to humiliate him at that party instead of handling things privately like an adult. We were still on that. He was still mad about the party. I asked him if he seriously thought exposing him was worse than what he did, and he said it wasn't about worse. It was about the fact that I made a choice to destroy his reputation and his relationship with our friends when I could have come to him first. He said I wanted revenge more than I wanted our marriage. I told him I found out my husband was planning to leave me for my best friend, and his main concern was how it made him look. He started arguing that wasn't what he meant, but I talked over him because I was done letting him redirect every conversation. Then I brought up the Instagram post. Mara posting that picture of them at the bar the same day he texted me saying he was choosing his family. I asked him to explain that. He said he went to tell her it was over, that the picture was from before they talked, that she was upset and posted it without thinking, and then deleted it when she realized. I asked why they were taking cute pictures together if he went there to end things, and he got quiet. Then he said, because it wasn't that simple. Because they'd been together for 2 years, and you don't just end something like that in one conversation. Because he owed her an explanation and some closure. He owed her. The woman who helped him cheat on me for 2 years. He owed her something. I asked him straight up, did he tell her he loved her during that conversation? And he said I was trying to trap him with questions. I said no, I was trying to get a straight answer for once in my life. Did he or did he not tell Mara he loved her when he went to quote-unquote end things? He wouldn't answer. He kept saying it wasn't relevant, and I kept pushing, until finally he admitted that yes, he told her he cared about her deeply, and that part of him would always love her, but that he was choosing his family. Part of him would always love her. That was his version of ending things. That was him choosing his family. I laughed. I told him that wasn't choosing me. That was keeping his options open while trying to have it both ways. And then he said something that made me want to flip the table. He said that I needed to accept that feelings don't just disappear, that he spent 2 years building something with Mara and those feelings were real even if the situation was wrong. He said that if I expected him to pretend she meant nothing to him, then I was asking him to lie again, and wasn't the whole point that we were supposed to be honest now? So his argument was that I should appreciate him being honest about still having feelings for his mistress, like I was supposed to be grateful he wasn't hiding it anymore. I told him to get out, and he said no. He said he wasn't leaving until we actually resolved something because he was tired of every conversation ending with me shutting down. He said I owed it to our kids to at least try. That's when screamed at him that he didn't get to talk about what I owed our kids, that I was the one who held this family together while he was off with Mara, that I was the one who would have to explain to Wyatt why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, that I was the one who watched Ella cry because she didn't understand why everything felt different. I told him he forfeited his right to lecture me about our children when he chose to build a secret life with someone else instead of being present in the life he already had. He tried to interrupt, and I told him to shut up. I told him I knew about the timeline, the messages where he and Mara discussed waiting until Ella was in school full-time, the plans they made for how they'd eventually be together publicly. I told him he didn't get caught in some accidental emotional affair. He made a plan to leave his family, and the only reason he was here begging for another chance was because he got exposed before he was ready. He tried to deny that the timeline was serious, said they were just talking, just imagining possibilities, that it didn't mean he was actually going to do it. And I asked him why he would discuss it at all if he wasn't planning on following through. Why have that conversation with Mara if leaving me wasn't something he genuinely wanted? Then I asked him one more thing. I asked him if Mara hadn't been caught. If I'd never found that phone, would he still be with her right now? Would he still be lying to me? Would he have eventually left like they planned? He said he didn't know. He said he tried not to think about it. He said things were complicated, and he couldn't say for sure what he would have done. That was his answer. He couldn't say for sure that he wouldn't have left me for her. Even now, standing in our kitchen trying to save our marriage, he couldn't commit to saying he would have stayed. I picked up the divorce papers and told him these were getting filed tomorrow. I told him he could send his lawyer's information to mine. I told him we could work out custody through mediation, but I was done having conversations like this. He grabbed my arm and said I was making a mistake I couldn't take back. That once this was done, it was done, and our family would never be the same. I told him our family was never going to be the same the moment he chose her. And I told him to get out of my house. He left. But before he did, he turned around and said that Mara was the one who wanted to tell me. That she'd been pushing him to come clean for months, and he was the one who kept saying no. Like that was supposed to make me feel something. Like knowing she wanted to confess was supposed to make any of this better. I slammed the door behind him. The papers are getting filed tomorrow morning. I already confirmed with my lawyer. What gets me is that even at the end, he couldn't just own it. He had to throw in that thing about Mara wanting to tell me. He had to make her seem like less of a villain. Even while trying to save his marriage, he was still protecting her. That tells me everything I need to know about who he actually chose.